On July 29, 1992, Cameroon awoke to shocking news that would reverberate through the nation for decades to come. Jeanne Irene Biya, the country's first lady and wife of President Paul Biya, had died suddenly under circumstances that official reports described as a brief illness. However, the timing, the rapid burial, and the suspicious deaths that followed sparked questions that remain unanswered to this day. What made her death particularly alarming was President Biya's absence. He was abroad in Dakar, Senegal, for an event many considered non. How could a nation's first lady die so suddenly, while her husband was conveniently away? The swift burial that followed, with minimal public ceremony and state media providing scant details, only deepened the mystery. Adding to the intrigue were the murders of 2 European nuns closely associated with her, leading many to believe that sensitive knowledge about her death was being deliberately suppressed. This is the untold story of Jeanne Irene Biya, a woman of grace and mystery whose death continues to captivate a nation. Jeanne Irene Biya was born on October 12, 1935, in Monombo, a village in the non-yet-Mafumu region of Cameroon. She came from the Ava family, a lineage with notable political connections. Raised by her uncle Thomas Etterman, a cocoa farmer and exporter, Jeanne grew up in the shadow of political influence. Her uncle's brother, Jean-Louis Ava, served as a long-standing deputy in the region, exposing young Jeanne to the world of politics and public service. Coming from a respectable Catholic family, she was raised under colonial missionary influence that emphasized modesty, discipline, and strong moral values. From a young age, Jeanne exhibited a calm, composed demeanor that distinguished her from her peers. She was known for intelligence and poise rather than flamboyance, carrying herself with dignified restraint that would later define her role as First Lady. Jeanne pursued her education in France, attending the nun school of midwives where she trained as a midwife. Upon returning to Cameroon, she dedicated herself to maternal and child health, working at the Pavin Bodylock of the Yaoundé Central Hospital. Her commitment to service reflected her upbringing and values, establishing her as a woman of substance beyond her later political position. Jeanne met Paul Biya when he was a rising technocrat in Cameroon's political structure under President Amadou Ahidjo. At the time, Biya was attracting attention in elite government circles due to his European education and administrative skill. Their meeting, whether through diplomatic functions or intimate family connections, unfolded quietly in alignment with conservative norms of the era. Their relationship developed without scandal or public drama, characterized by discretion and mutual respect. On September 2, 1961, Jeanne married Paul Biya, at a time when Cameroon was undergoing transformation after independence. Their marriage united 2 disciplined personalities, who valued order, discretion, and image. As her husband climbed the ranks from Secretary General at the presidency to Prime Minister, Jeanne adapted to a life surrounded by political elites and government expectations, yet she never sought attention. When Paul Biya unexpectedly became president in 1982, following Amadou Ahidjo's resignation, Jeanne was thrust into the national spotlight as Cameroon's First Lady. Unlike many who would have embraced such a position, she maintained her aura of mystery, rarely speaking in public or granting interviews. She carried herself like a silent guardian beside the nation's leader, attending state events with measured elegance, while preserving rigid formality. She dressed modestly in refined but conservative attire, representing the image of a disciplined, supportive wife rather than an outspoken political personality. Behind palace walls, however, life was far from serene. The transition of power from Ahidjo to Biya was marked by rumors of conspiracy, betrayal, and attempted As political tension rose, Jeanne found herself in the background of a fragile regime struggling to define its legitimacy. Palace insiders described her as deeply loyal, believing her role was to maintain emotional stability for her husband rather than build a public image. She was soft-spoken but firm, a woman who didn't meddle in politics yet understood the weight of the office she stood beside. During their marriage, persistent rumors suggested that Paul Biya and Jeanne faced fertility challenges. While they officially had one recognized son, François Biya, several political insiders have long suggested that François may not have been Jeanne's biological child, but rather a child fathered by Paul Biya, with a close relative, reportedly Jeanne's own sister. According to these unofficial accounts, Jeanne, unable to conceive due to alleged fertility issues, agreed to adopt and raise the child as her own to preserve the image of a stable presidential family. Motherhood brought Jeanne quiet joy, But it did not shield her from the isolation that came with life in power. The presidential residence, with all its prestige, was also a place of immense emotional solitude. Observers noted that she often appeared distant, almost melancholic. Her public appearances remained brief and controlled, never allowing personal vulnerability to be seen by the nation. Throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s, as Cameroon faced growing economic hardship, political opposition, and public dissatisfaction, Jeanne remained a reserved figure, never engaging in public confrontation. She embodied the archetype of a silent first lady present, but unreadable. Then came July 29, 1992. Official reports stated that Jeanne died after a sudden and brief illness. But the public wasn't buying it. Only a week earlier, a healthy and beaming first lady had appeared on television, receiving American musician Stevie Wonder at Unity Palace. Her sudden death, occurring just hours after President Biya left for a meeting in Dakar, where his presence was not mandatory, led to widespread rumors of assassination. Many believed it had been arranged for her to be killed shortly after Biya left the country, providing him with an alibi. She was buried almost immediately in a very low-key, private event on August 1, 1992, during a high mass at the Yaoundé Cathedral, attended by thousands, including Zairian President Mobutu Sese Seko. Bishop Jean-Baptiste Amar declared words that sent chills through the congregation. Now that Jeanne is dead, there is absolutely nothing she can do about her fate. Only our prayers can make God have pity on her. The circumstances surrounding her death raised alarming questions. Why had her body not been laid in state? Why did she not receive a state burial befitting a first lady? Why such a rush to bury her? Why had state media been so economical with information regarding her illness? Shortly after her death, 2 European Reverend sisters, whom she had visited shortly before, were found murdered in Gem. It was alleged they had been killed because they knew the truth surrounding her death. Several factors fueled assassination theories. President Biya's suspicious absence abroad, the rapid burial with minimal ceremony, the media silence from state-controlled outlets, the murders of the 2 nuns who had close ties with her, and persistent political rumors of internal power struggles within the ruling elite. Despite widespread speculation, no concrete evidence has ever substantiated claims of foul play. The official cause of death remains a brief illness, and the true circumstances continue to be debated. 2 years later, on April 23, 1994, Paul Biya married Chantal Biya, a significantly younger woman, whose flamboyant fashion and public presence marked a dramatic shift from the quiet, reserved Jeanne. Their highly publicized wedding symbolized a new era at the presidential palace. But for many Cameroonians, questions about Jeanne's death remain unanswered. Her memory, a haunting reminder of the opaque and secretive nature of power. What do you believe really happened to Jeanne Irene Biya? Share your theories in the comments, and tag someone interested in African political mysteries. Subscribe for more untold stories from the corridors of power. Hit the notification bell, because truth deserves to be remembered, and history demands our attention today. This is a story of triumph. Did the protagonists make the right decisions? If you were in this situation, what would you do? Share your opinion in the comments. We want to know what you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Memorable Stories and Overcoming, where inspiring stories of triumph and justice are shared daily.